here we are. We've made it to week 43 of our second year of our journey through the Word. This week we'll walk with Ezekiel for a time, but then we're going to leave him toward the end of the week, and we'll come back and finish our visit with him later on. In the early part of this week, though, we find ourselves with Ezekiel in his vision of the Valley of Dry Bones. This would have been an alarming place for Ezekiel. As a priest, this place of death would have defiled him. The word valley speaks of something that has a result of being split apart from an internal source rather than from the rendering or tearing apart. In other words, God is saying to them, you brought this on yourself. It was a destruction from the internal, not the external. And it says that the bones weren't just dry. It tells us that the bones were very dry. So what's the difference between a dry bone and a very dry bone? A very dry bone not only is just a bone, but it has no more marrow left in it. Marrow is that part of our bones where the blood is produced, the very life source is produced. In other words, it's a way of saying that all hope was gone. As God brings these bones back to life, I want you to pay attention to the sequence, the order in which he does it. The first thing he does is he calls bone to come to its bone. He brings the skeleton together. And it says bone to its bone. Things were out of place. A hand bone connected to the foot is not going to help a body. And so he puts the bones back in the places where they belong. God, help us to see as you bring life back into our lives and our churches, let us see the order that you've ordained. A skeleton is for structure. It's also for support. If you have muscle and ligaments but no bone, there's no way that this being is going to be able to stand up. And so God says, I'm going to cause the structure to become right so you can stand. I'm also going to bring the source of manufacturing life back into you. And then the next thing is I will cause sinew to come on you. This is muscles and ligaments. Now these muscles and ligaments give the body its strength and its mobility. Last of all, he causes the skin to come on it. Skin is the largest organ of our body. It's actually an organ, and it's the largest organ of our body. And this produces protection. If we don't have skin, then all of our inner organs are very vulnerable to everything that's happening in this world, the germs and the sicknesses. And so this organ of our skin is a protection to the outside world. It also gives our bodies sensitivity. My skin has all these little electrical impulses that it sends to my brain that causes my whole body to function together. Although this body now has a skeleton and it has muscles and ligaments, and lastly, it has the skin to cover it, that nice jumpsuit of skin to keep our innards from falling out. It still isn't alive. It has no breath. If we look at the Hebrew word for breath, wind, and spirit, we find that it's the same word. It's the word ruach. And God tells Ezekiel, prophesy to the four winds, to the four breaths. Why four? Why the four winds? Well, as we look at the way this world is made, the four winds are the balance of nature, the balance of the winds. And now God is saying, prophesy to the balance of the Holy Spirit in our lives. Prophesy to the breath, the Spirit of God, which is what brings life. Nothing has true life until it is filled with God's breath. And nothing has true life until it is filled with the resurrection life power, the very breath of God. As God continues to speak of Israel's restoration and Israel's resurrection, he no longer sees it as two separate nations. He says when this life comes into them, they will be one nation again, no longer a northern kingdom of Israel and a southern kingdom of Judah. They will be the kingdom of Israel, one nation, truly one nation under God. And God says, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. These same words are spoken in Revelation 21 and verse 7, when God says, I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Once again, we see such a parallel between Ezekiel and that book of Revelation. Ezekiel is filled with end time prophecies that have yet to be fulfilled. We see this, especially in Ezekiel chapter 38, when we come to the battle of Gog of the land of Magog. The word Gog is a title. It's Gog, the ruler who is in the land of Magog. This battle is spoken of in Revelation 20, verses 7 through 10. And this battle of Gog in the land of Magog is not to be confused with the battle of Armageddon. The battle of Armageddon takes place before the millennial reign of Christ, while the battle of Gog of Magog takes place after the 1,000 years are completed. This battle takes us back to the time of Noah. Who are those who are in this battle? We find those who are mentioned in Ezekiel, in this chapter 38 of Ezekiel. We find that they are parallel to those who are mentioned in Genesis 10, verses 2 and 3. So who are they? Gog of the land of Magog is from the line of Japheth. If you remember, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We know that Israel is a descendant from the line of Shem. As we look at Gog of the land of Magog, he's from the line of Japheth. Also, Meshach and Tubal, if you go back to Genesis 10, we find that these are sons of Japheth. And then Persia is mentioned. Persia is modern day Iran. And Persia is identified with Tiras, who was a son of Japheth. And also we have Gomer and Togarmah, who are the grandsons of Japheth. And so we find that these nations are all descendants of the line of Japheth. And then we have Ethiopia and Put, who are a part of the southern part of Egypt and part of Libya. These are descendants of Ham. And so we find that there are 6 Japheth nations that come against Israel, and there are 2 Hamite nations that come against Israel. Japheth nations come against Israel from the north, and the Hamite nations come against Israel from the south. And these will attack the descendants of Shem. I want you to also notice that there are no Arab nations in Gog's army, although we do find them in the Battle of Armageddon. We'll look more at that when we get to the book of Revelation. The war with Gog of Magog is God's final battle. The magnitude of cleanup after this war is staggering. This is an amazing victory, and it is punctuated by God's promise to Israel that he will bring complete restoration and that he will pour out his spirit on them. At this point, we temporarily end our time with Ezekiel, although we will come back to him and we will see more about the messianic reign that is to come. And now we will rush ahead in our timeline to Israel's exile. We stand on a new vista, and it's called Restoration of the Temple. Our tour guide is Ezra. The 70 years of Israel's exile has finally been completed. And during those years of captivity, the Jews have experienced the battles that have been fought by Babylon and has seen their defeat to the Medes and the Persians. It is during our time with Ezra that we are introduced to Cyrus, the king of Persia. Ezra tells us how God spoke to Cyrus and moved him to send the Jews that wanted to return to their land to go back and to rebuild the temple. It's an interesting fact that we can learn from Ezra that this proclamation took place in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia's reign. This is even more amazing when we look ahead to Daniel in the not too distant future and see that one of Daniel's visions that took place near the end of his life takes place in the third year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, when Daniel is an old man, but he has lived long enough to see the exiles returning to the land of Israel. Ezra is from the priestly lineage of Aaron through the line of Eleazar. It's also interesting to remember that Eleazar was the priest during Joshua's lifetime, and it was Joshua and Eleazar who appointed the land to the tribes after they entered the land. I don't think it's any coincidence that God now uses one of Ezra's descendants when they return to the land again. Ezra is a scribe, which tells us he's well versed in the law of Moses. And Ezra begins his word by telling us of Cyrus's decree that the temple should be rebuilt. He then gives us a list of the exiles who returned with that first wave of returnees to the land of Israel. The first thing that they do is to build up the offering of burnt offerings, and the sacrifice, the offering of burnt offering, is quickly reestablished. And also the Feast of Tabernacles is the first to be reinstituted. This is one of the three major pilgrim festivals that we've already looked at. And you might remember from our time with Zechariah that the Feast of Tabernacles is also very important to the millennial reign of Christ. Although the work of the restoration of the temple has begun, Ezra tells us about the oppositions that they faced and how God intervenes for them and causes their enemy to wish they'd never asked about it or brought up the topic. You see, when God brings our battle and fights our battles, he has a way of causing a victory that goes beyond even our wildest dreams. We end our week with the completion of the temple and the reinstituting of Passover. These pilgrim festivals are a part of the skeletal structure of the nation of Israel. And it is no coincidence that Jesus was crucified during one of these Passover, these pilgrim festivals, the festival of Passover, and that he has become our Passover lamb. These festivals are perpetual. They are ongoing. They will continue to be ongoing in the future and into the very reign of Christ. Our time with Ezra is short, but what a power-packed few days we have with him. So grab yourself a cuppa, and that's Kiwi for get yourself a cup of coffee or tea or Milo or whatever your favorite hot drink is. And then sit back and savor your time with this amazing prophet. Enjoy your journey. And once again, I will see you again next week.